Then I felt a calmness firmly hug me, and I drifted deeper than my thoughts into my conscious mind. I appeared in a waiting room. Everything was white and clean, and I entered the top of the tiers with benches and tables for each row going down. I went and found my table and sat down, looking at the name on my desk. I had a stack of paperwork on my desk. I looked around and everyone had different sized stacks of paperwork. There were some people at the bottom of the stage that were done with the process and were being escorted into the next room. Some people had loved ones waiting for them and others didn't. I had 2 loved ones waiting for me at the bottom, encouraging me to finish up my paperwork. But then I started to feel cold. Chapter 8. The Red. And there's question marks if you can't see what I'm waving my mouse at. The question marks mean that the character doesn't know where he is right now. Just an editor's note there. It was cold. That didn't make sense. I opened my eyes and sat up, all too late, realizing that I would bonk my head. I didn't bonk my head, though, because my little coffin bed had shoved me out into the chilly ship. It didn't look like before, though. We'd come to a stop and it was cold, and everything had a dingy red hue. I zipped my hoodie back up and swung my feet around to sit up. My head felt okay. I was a little wobbly, but no more than usual. I thought about pulling my bendy tactical light out of my chest rig and turning it on. I could switch it to a 90-degree angle, then clip it back on, but I decided I needed to clear the ship in case the bad guys were on board. I put my left hand on my foregrip and pressed the button, and the light came on. I let my finger off the button, and the light went off. Good, I thought reassuringly and smirking to myself. I had like 3 flashlights on me, but it was helpful when they all worked. I checked my watch and pressed the light button. I was shocked to see that I'd been asleep 5 hours. I checked the date to make sure it wasn't like a day in 5 hours, and that was thankfully not the case. I swept the room with my light to see how things were going, and something caught my eye in the corner of the room. In the dim red light, it looked like a little turtle that was hiding. I went over and tipped it over with the barrel of my rifle, and it was an airman helmet with clamp-style ear mounts. It had a Post-it note on it that said, "For you, buddy. Hope your head feels better." I took the note off and put it in my pocket, then remembered to check all my pockets. Everything was there, of course. Then I put the helmet on. It was a good fit and thunked down snugly on my head. The part where I got bumped didn't feel any worse than any other part of my head ever felt with the different types of headaches I got. There was something that felt weird in the helmet. I took it off for a second, and there was a cord wrapped up inside. I took the cord out and plugged one side into the headset in the helmet and dug out my radio. Once I got it out, I plugged the other side into my radio and turned it on. Gently at first, so I didn't blast my eardrums out and give me more of a headache. A familiar girl's voice came on and told me how my radio was doing, and I smiled. I hadn't had time to get the channels from the debrief, so I switched to the maritime channel to hear what there was to hear. There was a dangly bit in between the 2 cord ends, and it was an on-off push to talk. I clipped it on my rig, and then was ready to go. I absent-mindedly rotated my volume knob clockwise and counterclockwise. I did this until I estimated to where I could hear things without blowing my poor head off with noise. I wouldn't know for sure until there was something going on. I wasn't going to mash the talk button to see if it would transmit, because that would alert people to my presence, and they may be able to hone in on me if they were looking. At least I could hear, though. That was my main goal. The headset was really nice and was noise cancelling, but it seemed to amplify the important sounds. Things I couldn't normally hear, I could now hear quite well. This was great. I started my adventure clearing the hallway, then starting to go room by room. I carefully cleared each room using my angles, and everything was silent except for the waves brushing against the hull. I could hear a lot clearer with the helmet on, and there was nothing around. I closed my eyes to rest for a second. I opened my eyes and saw a world of bad guys shooting at us and running out of ammo. We went to our hideout and there was no ammo left there either, and more bad guys came, and they were able to loot us as they had ammo and we didn't. We had knives, but there was never an opportune moment to use them properly. They were able to take 3 of our rifles with them, and there wasn't anything viable we could do about it. Half the looters came back after we let them go, and they decided they wanted to join us because they liked our video games and toys. Apparently they'd skipped looting them due to the priority, and as they were prior rummaging through our stuff, it seemed like a fair trade since they had ammo, and they seemed like good people. I opened my eyes and everything seemed to be clearer. I think my head was starting to calm down a bit, thankfully. Chapter 9, Where Am I? Midnight, Day 1. I cleared the rest of the ship and nobody was on board. It didn't take me too long. When I got up to the deck level on the bridge, the red emergency lights were off. That allowed me to further sneak around a bit. I stole some glances outside when I could, hoping nobody saw me. We were tethered to a big structure. I couldn't see what it was, though. I would have to go out onto the deck for that. The ceiling above me was obstructing my view from the shadows inside the ship. I crawled around, my knee pads in my pants saving me from bashing my knees up. I wanted to get as close to the deck as I could so I could verify what we were tethered to. I was about to leave the shadows and head to the door when I started getting a static break on my comms. It came in very clear and didn't blow my head off like usual. It was a very refreshing experience. The comms must have an internal noise limiter on top of the external. Very nice. The message, however, wasn't as calming. This is the QRT. We received your message. Command wishes to relay information. 1 fish, 2 fish? We don't have today's long distance check yet. We're responding to your distress signal. It wasn't a distress signal, over. Yeah, well, we need to come on board and check anyway. I thought you said you had a message from command, over. There was silence after that. I had to make a decision quickly. I tried to quietly and carefully open the door to crawl outside to see the situation. I was able to open and shut the door quietly, and the otherwise pleasant ambient noise from the ocean drowned out whatever sound remained. I shimmied my way out from under the balcony a little bit, still in the shadow, and saw a giant oil rig. I looked all around, and I didn't see another ship in sight. It could still potentially be pretty far out, but there was no way to tell in these still rough seas. Should I wait for that ship and try to ambush them? It would be a challenge all by myself, especially in the dark. They could have night vision, or who knows. Should I try to reach out to them? Probably only make things worse. The guy on the radio from the rig obviously weren't telling them the true situation, so the only option I seemed to have was to try to race through the oil rig and try to figure out what was going on. Hopefully my friends were on board and okay so we could continue the mission. I thought, I've considered my options. I think I'll take my chances on the rig and stick to the plan. The plan was never to ambush a quick response team, was it? I tried to think for a second, and I couldn't recall a part of the plan being the rig alerting anyone as to our presence or plan. Actually, I couldn't remember the plan very well. I decided to come up with my own plan. But first, I needed to talk to who was on the rig. So first, I needed to figure out how to get on the rig. I could get their attention and have them come get me, or try to sneak on board somehow. I didn't know who was in control of the rig. It could be good guys or bad guys or some neutral third party. Maybe everyone was sitting around and being happy eating hot dogs and mac and cheese with corn in it. Who knows? I thought about turning my Wi-Fi on my phone, but some server administrator might see me or something. Plus, I don't know what it would really get me. I checked my phone anyway to see if it was in airline mode and didn't have any texts. I found out that people could send text to your phone even offline, which was pretty weird. No text, though. I've been looking up at the rig and there wasn't anyone patrolling. There weren't any spotlight patterns to judge. The seas were starting to get rougher again. I didn't think it'd be safe to stay on deck much longer. I already had my bag and everything I needed, and there wasn't any more reason to stay on the ship. Nothing more I could do from here. I carefully and quietly as I could went over to the ramp and began crawling up it until I was on the oil rig. A set of the ramp expanded over the water, which was very unsettling. I didn't look down because all I could remember was how cold and dark it always looked to me. Nobody knew I was here, and they wouldn't miss me for a long time, even if they got out of this okay somehow. I pushed the thoughts out of my mind and got on the rig as fast and as quietly as I could.